This is Andy Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and I'm delighted to join by Jon Pegg over Zoom. John, obviously, we would have liked it to have been in happier circumstances for yourself, but unfortunately, we're doing this interview on the back of Sam's defeat to Ted Cheeseman this past weekend. Just reflect on the fight for me, John. You know, what are your thoughts on Sam's unanimous decision defeat?
It was an absolutely cracking fight. And as I said to Sam, because I'm quite honest afterwards, it wasn't a robbery because I could see that Ted got it by a point. But I thought we'd got it. I did think, like, if we'd have got it, I would have expected them not to say it was a robbery either. It was that kind of fight. I honestly think a draw would have been a fair result for both lads. It would have done neither of them any harm. But a fight like that, and, you know, Sam lost his title and his world ranking and stuff, which is a bit of pill to swallow because he went in as defending champ. And when Matchroom put the thing just after the final bell, a lot of people's views had changed. It was like 44% Sam, 20% draw, and some at 30-odd, some at Ted, whereas a lot different to that before. So the general feeling was that Sam had won it, and some very good judges thought he'd won it. But it was not to be, you know. Sam, like I said, Sam doesn't really get close decisions. I think Sam's hindered by the fact that if he's not slamming away, people forget that he can do a bit of jabbing and moving and stuff. Whereas some lads do it and get like, oh, this is a masterclass. If Sam's not slamming away like a lunatic and getting shots and getting big shots off, he doesn't get a lot of credit. I mean, he got given 4 rounds by 2 of the judges. And basically that meant going into the last rounds, Sam would have had to score 3 knockdowns to get a win. Now, nobody was looking at that fight that way. If Sam had scored 2 heavy knockdowns in the last round, he still would have lost on the cards. And nobody was looking at that fight that way. And that's the kind of uphill struggle Sam's got. He either wins very dominantly or close stuff goes against him. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether they're expecting more out of him because he's so action-packed. And whereas someone can win a round nicking it behind the jab, Sam can't. If he does that and scores more shots, it's kind of like, oh, well, he hasn't done his job this round. Score it against him. And people will kind of knock Sam for blazing away. But he said afterwards, I feel like if I'm not knocking their heads off, I'm never going to get a break. So when they're knocking him for lack of defence, he's got it in his head that if he tries to use defence and box slickly, it never goes his way. And if you look at his record, the close split decisions are all that, and never in his favour. Every fight he's won very dominantly. You know, he's won quite well. But, you know, it is what it is. No good dwelling on it because it's not going to change anything. But, you know.
John, just to stick with the fight itself and the 2 guys when they was in the ring, you know, it seemed to be that Ted had the better first half of the fight, and then Sam had the better second half of the fight.
Yeah.
Why did you feel that maybe Sam was a bit slow to start, or did you feel like that at all?
No, we knew Ted would come out fast because he always does. And if you start reacting and trying to go fast with him, you end up both burnt out in the second half. And even though Ted come out fast, I know the commentary had him losing every round, which I spoke to a lot of neutral characters, and nobody thought he lost every round. And you know, we felt we was drawing enough out of Ted that the second half would do us in good stead. We had it 4-2 after 6 rounds. Ad did the Daily Mail, who was there. Peter Fury had it 3 each. Joe Gallagher had it even. You know, a lot of good judges. And you know, I've spoken to reporters such as yourself who are totally neutral and who will tell me exactly what they think. And I appreciate that because sometimes you can be a bit clouded. And nobody has turned around and says, yeah, we had it 6-0. And, you know, it sounds crazy, but the commentary doesn't realise how influential they are, especially in a quiet setting. Because if you're sitting there and the rounds are very close and very tight, and you're hearing 2 familiar voices saying, oh, well, so-and-so's won every round here, you will adjust your mindset. Like, you know, and I thought to myself, like, you know, because I was thinking, come on, we're not losing every round here. No, you know, surely people are thinking that when I was hearing things in the background. And, you know, like, I've got no problem with the decision. I says to Ted, you come fought your best. You got it. No. But the commentary was not very Sam orientated. And I thought perhaps that was me. But then afterwards, look at social media, and I'm not on about on mine or Sam's timelines. I'm on about on Matchroom's timeline. I'm on about on Peter Fury's. I'm on about people who are totally neutral. And people were saying, what the fuck is this? Is it anti-Sam? And I've had a chat about it, and I don't think it was, but that's how it come across. And nobody can make any bones about that, because I've got really good neutral people telling me, yeah, it wasn't geared towards Sam. And that's not right. It's especially in such a tough, close fight. One round being influenced, you know, so many people said it was one round either way. Now, when you've got, you can hear the commentary saying how Ted won the first 5 or 6 when nobody else agrees, apart, you know, and the only people who did maybe agree, looking at the scorecards, was the people who was listening to that commentary. You know, the judges could hear it. And Joe Gallagher brought this up, and he said he's really worried that the commentary, and people, you know, the commentary have got well-known, well-respected voices. When you hear them voices saying something in a really tight situation, no, you're not human if you don't react to that. People who I know well says to me, I was watching the fight thinking, am I reading this wrong because I like Sam's style? Because I can't see this. You know, Peter Fury put up, this is a 50-50 fight, but you wouldn't think that if you was just listening to it on radio, the commentary. And it kind of, in a close, if it was a real kind of wide fight, oh well, but in a close fight where it could have gone one round either way, which it could have, and you know, that's why I've got no problem with the decision. You know, it's, you kind of just want a fair crack of the whip, and you know, there's a lot of neutral people who says to me it wasn't fair. You know, no matter how much people try and, you know, I had a really big, long discussion with Andy Scott. And I says, Andy, if we go on social media and type this in now, I says, let's sit down and see. And he went, oh, but it's 50. I said, it's not 50-50. I said, you can see it's not 50-50. I've asked people, neutral people as yourself, what you thought. And nobody thought it was 50-50 and fair. Nobody thought that. But, you know, it is what it is. But Joe Gallagher brought up a massive point there, that the commentators are influential and people know their voices. And if a round's that tight and a judge can hear, well, oh, so-and-so's 1-4 on the trot. You know, like I say, 2 of them scorecards, I don't think anybody had Sam 4 rounds down going into the last round. Nobody had Sam needing 3 knockdowns to win a fight in that last round. But that's where we was. And that's, I don't know, perhaps it's just me, but if it was just me, I wouldn't bring this up. But I've read, you know, I've spoke to journalists, and journalists will tell you how it is. I've spoke to people who are close to the other team, and they've actually said, oh, we thought Ted won it by 1, but Sam didn't get a fair crack of the whip on the commentary. They've said that. And I've got no problem with that, because, yeah, Ted did win it. And, you know, it's, I don't know. I don't want to sound like sour grapes, because the kid won a fantastic fight, and I've said straight away, anything I moan about, I am not detracting from Ted's victory. I'm not saying he didn't win. I'm just saying things like this in a very close fight can bother you. And when you see so many people echoing it on social media, as I think you must have as well, you must have read the comments and stuff. I'm not making this up. I'm going on a lot of respected people and a lot of general public. I'm going on what they've said. It just makes it a little bit harder to swallow when you're the defending champion and you've lost everything by a point or 2. Do you know what I mean? So, but the fight was great. The fight was fantastic. I think Sam's shown a lot of improvements that people didn't realise was in the tank. You know, especially in the second half, once Ted slowed down a touch, because Ted started very quickly. I think Sam showed a jab that people didn't think he had. He was making him miss 4 and 5 headshots. He was showing a bit of footwork. But this is the problem, because Sam's made these adjustments, boxed really well. And he's like, well, when I go slam bang and people knock me and give me grief saying I take too many shots, he says, now I'm doing it a little bit differently. I don't get a thing off the judges. And, you know, I don't know. He's not feeling that good about himself today. He just feels like, you know, I'm doing and he just doesn't get, like he says, he honestly feels like he has to knock them out to win. He's never had a close victory. You know, he had a European title fight that was very close. He lost a split decision. If we'd have gone to France in the other way round, Sam wouldn't have wouldn't have won a close split decision in a close fight. And he just says, I never seem to get the rub. He says, I have to win dominantly. He says, I either win almost every round or I chin him. He says, and to do that, I have to go a bit crazy and leave myself open. He says, because if I try and box, I get no credit for it. You know, nobody expects him to box and he gets no credit. But on the fight, what a great fight. He'll probably be up there with Fight of the Year with the British Boxing Board of Control Awards. And if Sam decides he wants to still carry on, because I've got a feeling he might just say, you know, I've done what I set out to do. That might be it. If he does, I'm hoping that he can see that some of the tweaks he made and some of the stuff he picked up off Liam Smith really done him good. And I'm hoping we can build on that at 26, because you keep getting these guys who write him off, who, you know, there's a lot of people who love to write him off. Because he doesn't speak out, because he's very quiet. And I'm hoping that, you know, I've never seen his support so much after this fight. I've never seen so much positive support. And I'm hoping he taps into that, because the support was unreal. And, you know, like I say, there's been a lot of buzz on social media. And he doesn't usually get that much support or that much praise after winning a fight. So who knows? Who knows how we'll feel in a month or a week or whatever. But it is what it is. What did you think of the fight?
I thought it was, from a neutral's perspective, it was a fantastic fight. You know, I said to you, you know, on the phone, it was a fight which there was so much hype around it. You always think, will it live up to it? Will it live up to expectations? And he did exceed those expectations. Both guys showed a lot of heart. On the scoring front, I had Ted 4-2 up after the first 6. And then
Can I just ask there, Andi? Now, this is my point. You had him 4-2 up. Yeah. Have you spoke to anyone who had him 5 or 6-0 down?
No.
That's my point. And the fact is, I can ask you that, and you're not a Sam Eggington fan, you're not a Ted Cheeseman fan, you're not a Matchroom kind of fan, you're not a Sky fan, you're not a Frank Warren fan, you're a reporter. And this is my point. 4-2. Now, and in the second half of the fight, I think it's hard to not give Sam 4 rounds minimum, in my opinion. And that's a draw, which, you know, I don't think anyone could have complained. I wouldn't have complained. I'm not complaining about Ted getting it by 1 point. I thought we'd won it, but I can see how it could have. But I just, you know, the stage is set, and I just don't think a lot of Sam's stuff is appreciated sometimes. You know, like a lad such as Bradley Skeet can win a fight behind a jab, and it's a masterclass, and he's an expert at what he does. Sam rings around behind a jab, and people complain that he's not doing his job and he's not looking very good. Do you know what I mean? You know, but it is what it is, mate. It's a boxing match. Our current climate tells us that there's a lot worse going on in the world than a boxing match. Sam's at home with his new baby girl and his other 2 lads. So it's not something to get too upset about. It's not something to get too bothered about. There's a lot of families out there with real problems at this current time. They're the people who are really upset today. They're the people who've got problems. It's a boxing match. We'll be over it. We're passionate about it, but it's not something it's not something that's gonna affect our lives or stick with us for fucking months and years on end. It's a boxing match.
There's just 2 things, John, I just want to touch on with regards to the commentary. First thing, how close was he to the ring from what it usually would be?
It's quite far away, because when Joe said that, I was there and I spoke to him. I said, Joe, you got nothing to worry about. I said there was about 10 foot from the ring to the barriers. And then there was about 5 rows of seatings for managers and stuff. And then the commentary was there. So it's about a good 20 foot. But then on the night, when you're outside and things carry and there's no bodies in the way, you know, like when you're in an empty room,
yeah,
and you can just speak, whereas in a normal room, the bodies kind of soak it up. You could hear it very clearly. And obviously, commentators are trained to be clear and crisp and quite loud. You know, that's their job. And it was carrying all the way over, and you could hear like every word. And I was like, luckily, Sam couldn't hear a word. He just says, I didn't hear a thing. I got on with it. But I was sitting there and I was thinking, it was even making me think, I had it the same as you. I had us 4-2 down. But I had us 4-2 down. And a bit like the Frankie Gavin fight, I says to Sam, when you lose rounds, as long as you make him work hard, you're doing your job. And a bit like Frankie, I says, don't worry you're losing rounds. You're making him work hard. It will slow down. And once it slows down, as the second half showed, we're going to be a bit happier. But I was thinking, well, we're slowing him down, but I don't want to be 6-0 down. I was thinking, surely that's not right. And he was putting things in my head, and it can make the trainer think, like, am I doing this wrong? And, you know, one opinion shouldn't make you think that. It's something that's got to be addressed, because it was making me thinking, am I getting this wrong? But then it turns out afterwards, by the hundreds, that we wasn't. It wasn't that. So it's a little bit worrying, but we've gone through it now and it's happened, and it is what it is. But in a fight that could have gone one round either way, which is what most people's consensus, and, you know, you only need that one round's influence when it's, and obviously as it kind of kicked into the real big rounds, some of the people around the ring was getting quite loud and it wasn't quite as bad. But the kind of nip and tuck rounds, it was really clear what we was hearing, and it was the only thing we was hearing. We wasn't hearing any fans. We wasn't hearing promoters shouting. It was the only thing we was hearing. And, you know, like I say, if it was just me thinking that, I wouldn't even mention it, because I'd just be like, oh, you know, the lads have boxed, let me enjoy it. But when I went on social media and I see really respected people saying the same thing, and then I hear the others, you know, just general fans from all over kind of agreeing, and I'm like, okay, this ain't just Sam's fans, this ain't just, you know, people like yourself and other journalists, like the guy from the Daily Mail, Riath. He had it 4-2 the same. The Birmingham Mail guy, who's very kind of hard on our own fighters, he had it. He says the worst I could make it was 5-1. He says, and that was me trying to be as kind of pro Cheeseman as I could. He says, and I made it 5-1. He says, I still had Sam winning at the end. He says, because the way it fell about. He says, but he says, I had it maybe 4-2. He says, but I thought if I was really kind of maybe a bit like leaning one way, he says, I had it 5-1. And I don't know, mate. You know, let's not go on about it too much, because it's more about the fight. But Joe had a good point, and I think it should be addressed, because it will leave people feeling a little bit like, bloody hell, that didn't seem 50-50, which as a defending champion and in Britain, you hope it would be 50-50. You know what I mean?
Final thing on it all I just wanted to touch on, John, was obviously I know you've got a very good relationship with Matt Macklin. I know you've kind of exchanged a few things over social media since. Did it surprise you at all, like, by his kind of card, or have you had any interactions with him since?
Yeah, I spoke to Matt, and Matt told me why. And you know, we know each other really well. And I just said to Matt, I said, I was really disappointed that you had us so many down and no one else did. And Matt explained why he thought it. And I says, that's fair enough. I says, but I says, the general consensus is with me here. I says, that's why I feel hard done by. I says, it's not like 50% is going, oh, Sky got it perfect, and 50 are going, oh, well, we didn't really like that. I says, look at social media. And I says, this isn't my social media. I says, look at Matchroom's social media. I says, there was a big debate on Peter Fury's. And Peter Fury doesn't know Sam. He doesn't know him at all. And, you know, Matt had a chat with me. You're not going to fall out. But I says, I'm a bit disappointed. I says, if you're saying it can go either way, but they all go one way, you don't feel very well done by. I says, and, you know, you've read the comments, Andy. I know you look the same as I do. I'm not being, what's it here? The comments are very heavily in the favour that Sam wasn't very well done by, aren't they? Would you agree?
Yeah, I've seen the comments, yeah.
You know, and you scoring it 4-2, you're scoring that totally neutrally. And, you know, it's just, you know, it is what it is. A lot of people had Sam nicking it. A lot of people had Ted nicking it. A lot of people had it a draw. I'm not arguing with the decision. It was a great fight. Two lads put it all on the line. But I just feel if they'd been going all these close rounds of Sam's, would the judges have perhaps lent his way? I'm not sure. They're hearing things. I don't know. But the judging the two judges that had us 3 down, after that great last round, that means they had us 4 rounds down going into the last round. And I cannot agree with that. And I don't think anyone can agree with that. You know, that meant Sam had to score 3 knockdowns to get a win. If Sam's would have scored 3 knockdowns in the last round, people would have gone like, Eggington's won this comfortably. But he wouldn't. He would have won it by 1 point. He had to score 2 knockdowns to still lose. And that's what kind of makes me think, if we'd have scored 2 knockdowns and still lost that fight, people would have outcried there. And this is my point. The judges' scorecards weren't reading the fight. Yeah, people can say, oh, well, the guy I thought got it. But the fact is, Sam had to knock him out to win in the last round. And it shouldn't have been like that. It shouldn't have. That's how he feels he's up against it. Sam's going into a last round in a close fight thinking, I've got to score 3 knockdowns to get a win here. Nobody would have thought he had to do that. You know, most people, like I say, the thing that Matchroom done afterwards, the poll, just before the decision was announced, a slight majority thought Sam had won it. And like I say, Ted got it. It was a close fight. But if you'd have said before the final bell, did Sam Eggington need 3 knockdowns in that last round to win? I don't think you'd have got many people saying, yeah, he needed 3 knockdowns to win that fight. But the judges' scorecard said he did. And this is how Sam feels. He doesn't never get a fair crack of the whip because of his style or because of his, he's just there to have a good row and never complains. I don't know. But again, I don't want to moan too much. Ted's on top of the world this week. He's got to win. If we'd have got the win, we would have been. But, it is what it is. What can you do? What can you do? It's boxing, and complaining and worrying about it isn't going to help. But for the people who are going into that situation, and Joe Gallagher has brought this up, they might think, well, should in a quiet situation, people be able to hear something that a lot of people thought was a bit one-sided? That isn't me saying it as a trainer. That's what the general kind of consensus is. And I've seen a newspaper article that's going out today that actually says it was very one-sided. People might not like it, but I'm just saying this is what people are saying. This isn't me saying it and everyone's going, shut up, John, you're Sam's trainer. Because I've had thoughts in the past, and when people haven't quite agreed, when I've asked people such as yourself, who I kind of know will be totally neutral, when they've said to me, oh, John, I think you're a bit wrong there, I think, okay, I'll probably still think it, but I'm going to rein it in, because people who I know are neutral are not agreeing with me, and they're probably being a bit more unbiased. But when people who are totally neutral tell me, yeah, I didn't really agree with that either, and then when you see the general public going, well, what the fuck was that? Then I think, well, perhaps that one I've got a point on. Do you know? And that's what, yourself, Andy. Oh, I've asked you lots of things, haven't I? Off the record, I say, what do you think? And you tell me, and then you can probably tell that I will go along with a general. If 5 people who are neutral, who are journalists, tell me something, who have got no link to either side, and they all and 4 of them say the one thing, then I won't make an outcry about it, or I won't even mention it. I'll be like, you know what? I'm not thinking straight here because I'm a trainer. But when 4 or 5 of the neutral people, which is how it's been, mate, who says it didn't seem very fair towards Sam, when like 4 or 5 say, yeah, you got a point, then I will bring it up, because I feel like the point I'm making has got to be a validation of people who have got nothing to do with me or Sam or Ted Cheeseman. Do you see what I'm saying? So, but I don't want to go on about it too much, because it was a great fight. It was a fantastic fight. Someone put on Twitter, and they made a great point. If Sam Eggington lost 10 fights on the trot, I'd still buy a ticket to watch him. And I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So we'll move forward. And the good thing is, as I said after the African fight, no excuses ever. But I say you'll see that wasn't Sam. And I think even the loss to Liam Smith, where he fought an absolute top world-class guy and stayed on his feet and had a good row, and the Italian fight, and even this fight where he's lost, a close decision, I think that proved that night wasn't Sam. And I think the other night proved that Sam's got, as I keep saying and people don't believe, he's learning things. I don't know what you thought, Andy, but I thought Sam showed things the other night that he's never showed before. What did you think?
Yeah, he started to show more. It's just those he obviously, because he started slower, those first few rounds, he started to get caught a lot more, and he was in that second half fight when he looked the more composed of the two, and he was getting on top of Ted a little bit, where he was able to kind of box a bit more, where he seemed to be a bit more comfortable in there.
Yeah, and even when, but the thing is, even when he got caught, he got clipped and he felt it. Because what it was, he caught Ted with a good one. As he went to attack, got caught with a fast one. And even there, he backed up to the ropes and he didn't drop his hands. I know he didn't do his usual bravado thing. He kind of kept his wits about him. And even there was a little bit of maturity, I thought, because you've seen Sam get clipped before and he drops his hands and does that stupidness. But he actually backed up to the ropes and you could see him taking stock of it. And when he gave the little smile, that weren't Sam being stupid. That was Sam as if to say, yeah, I'm back on it now. And he proved that by finishing the round strong. So, you know, even there where he got caught with one, when he was going for a shot of his own, I thought he showed a little bit more maturity. And the fact that he stepped off and was happy to throw the jab, I thought his jab worked really well. And, you know, it is what it is. But I think if Sam decides, after having a good think, that there's stuff out there for him, I think he's an improving fighter still. Sorry, Andy, someone rung me then.
That's all right. John, obviously, I just want to come on to Sam then. And since you've seen Saturday night, and from whatever conversations you've had since, how is Sam feeling, and what's your feelings with regards to how he feels about kind of the rest of his career?
I'm not sure, you know. I'm not sure, and I'm a positive person, and I try and put that in. You spoke to me yesterday, and I was a lot different to what I am today. I look at the positives, I find them, but even when Sam had like his really bad nights, he was kind of on his game, and he was you know, and he had his little girl with him yesterday. And he just says, "What's the use?" He says, you know, he says they can't even be bothered to get my music right, which I know sounds silly, but it bothered him because it was the third time on the trot. And he says, they can't. He says, what's the use? He says, my face don't fit. He says, the judges don't give me any credit. He says, there's no way I only won 4 rounds. He says, I know it was close. He says, I'm not disputing and doing crazy about the decision. He says, but the fact that 2 of the judges give me 4 rounds and 2 of the judges had me way down going into the last round. He says, I don't get any credit. He says, I'm trying to improve. He says, and nobody notices it. He says, usually it's talked about how much I'm easy to hit and my head movement's non-existent. He says, but when I show a bit of good head movement, which he did, he says it's not mentioned. He says it's always the negatives. And I've never seen him sit down. I've never seen him so kind of like, well, not even sit down. It's kind of just like, who cares? He says, what's the use? And if that, you know, I was thinking to myself, you know, he doesn't seem like he wants to box, but I thought to myself, if he does carry on boxing and he takes this attitude, he's not going to be the same kid. Because part of Sam's effectiveness is his desire and his will to win. And he kind of just says, like, you know, it's just like, it's all set up that, oh, well, he'll have a loss. It doesn't matter. He'll come back and do it again. He says, I just don't know if I can be bothered to again, which is a shame. But, you know, it is what it is. But it's a lot of things on top of another. And I tried to say to some of the guys, I said, look, please get his music right. I said, you've got it wrong twice. We had a discussion for over an hour going backwards and forwards. And he's standing there, top of the bill, and they got it wrong. And I was like, no wonder the kid feels like he doesn't really count. You know, and it's not a big deal. And it isn't a big deal, but to a fighter doing his ring walk, when he actually says, please get that right, it annoyed me last time. It put me off a little bit. To be the main event, the defending champion, and it's kind of just like, oh, well, we've done whatever anyway. It made him feel a little bit not part of it, do you know what I mean? You know, and that's why he says my face don't fit it, you know, nobody else would get there. And I know it's a petty, small thing, but it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen 3 times on the trot. When you've made a point of saying, this is going to annoy him, this is going to bother him, it wouldn't happen. And it did. And that's why he feels like, well, you know, it wouldn't have happened the other way around. But it is what it is. Who cares?
John, in fact, somebody I know, he's got a brilliant relationship with yourself and Sam, Barry Hearn. Has Barry said anything to you guys about the fight?
He said it was a good close fight. He said it was hard to score. He hasn't said this to me. He said it to Sam. He says, don't worry, there's plenty of fights out there. Get an 8-rounder and get back in. And Sam says, I had a world ranking the other day. I was the defending champ. I don't know if I can be bothered with doing a 6 or an 8-rounder on an undercard where people are talking about that I've lost 6 rounds. He says, what's the use? He says, he actually, he laughed when he was, because he says to me, he says, they can't get me music right when I'm at the top of the bill. He says, what are they going to do when I'm doing an 8-rounder? He says, they'll probably forget to pick me up. And that, I don't know, that sounds daft, but, to a fighter walking into the ring, if you ask trainers and fighters, the littlest thing can put you off and kind of shake your composure. That's why people have stories about someone knocking the door at 4 a.m. The littlest thing can rattle you and put you off. And we really, he made a point of asking to get it right, and it didn't. And what does it matter? It doesn't matter to anyone, but it mattered to him. Do you know what I mean? And that's how he felt. So we'll see. But, you can't, Matchroom look after you beautifully. You can't moan. The being in the bubble was exciting. The venue was great. The whole week was set up. It was crazy. It was really good fun and a really good experience, apart from obviously the decision. But, there's lads who, like one of the lads on there got knocked out and his jaw broke. He's in hospital. Gavin Gwynn got stopped in a fight he was right in. He must have been heartbroken. Sam lost a close decision, had a black eye, got paid well. Obviously, if there ever was a rematch, he wouldn't be getting paid the same. Even though he lost that fight, I think Sam has proven that he's valued for money. He might not be the best, most talented fighter in the country, but there's not many people who bring as much excitement and who the fans enjoy watching. And that's what the game's about. Do you want to watch Henry Mask as an undefeated world champion who wasn't very interesting to watch? Or do you want to watch Sam Eggington win and lose in fights where people are going mental? As a fan, I know what I'd want to watch. Sorry, mate, someone called again. Don't worry, I'll keep knocking them off.
John, final thing on it all. I think it would be a lot unfair of us not to bring him up. Ted Cheeseman, what did you make of Ted's performance and how much credit does he deserve for what he delivered as well on Saturday night?
No, we knew Ted was a good fighter, and not once did we say that he wasn't or he would be easy. Ted done exactly what I thought he would. He boxed as much as he could, because for all the talk of all overpowering and all that, you could see that was not in his eyes. You can tell looking at a fighter's eyes. Ted was going there to box. And when he boxed, he's a talented kid. But we also knew we'd slow him down. And when it come to fighting, Ted would fight back, but he wouldn't beat Sam in that department, which I think is pretty much the consensus. Ted won rounds early on boxing. He even stung Sam. Sam slowed him down, turned it into a fight, and won those rounds. And like Sam said, he says, Ted knows what he's built that way. When it comes down to it, he'll have a row. He didn't fold. He showed a lot. Ted brought exactly what I thought he would. And I knew it would be a close fight. And I thought being defending champion, if it was close, that close, that we might get a little bit of luck, but we didn't. But no, Ted tried to box. Well, no, Ted boxed very well. We slowed him down, as we said we would. Then once we slowed him down, he stood his ground and tried to fight with Sam. And Sam got the better of that, which is exactly how we said it would go. He withstood some real good stuff and kept firing back. And that's why it was such a good fight. A lot of people have folded under that pressure. A lot of good fighters have folded under that pressure. Do you know what I mean? Ted never. And it was a close fight, and he got it. But yeah, he didn't bring anything that, all the talk of if I want to go through him, it was just talk. And like I said beforehand, we don't play them games. Sam was coming to do what Sam does. We don't say, we're going to be a master. We knew Ted wouldn't try and go through him. Even when he clipped him and hurt him, he done a quick flurry, then got back to boxing. He didn't want to stay there. He stood there when he had to. And when he had to, he fought back, and he can fight as well. But that's where Sam was in charge. it is what it is. But no, you know, Ted's a young man and he's won the fight and he'll go forward. Don't know if he'll want a rematch. If I had that win, I wouldn't want a rematch. If we'd have got the win there and it's like such a tough fight, I wouldn't want a rematch. You know what I mean? So I can understand if he doesn't, because sensibly I wouldn't. But you know, and obviously you always want to move forward. So, but no, fair play to him. He stood his ground under intense pressure. He boxed when he needed to. It was what it was. He stuck to his game plan. We stuck to ours. They both kind of worked because he had the better of the first half. We had the better of the second half. But obviously, the judges was more impressed by what he did.
John, we will leave that there now, and I will leave you to enjoy the rest of the day. I appreciate giving up some time today and obviously reflecting over the events of this past weekend. Obviously, I hope Sam cheers up to some extent over the coming day, what have you. But I appreciate your time, as I say, and thank you for speaking to Boxing Social.
Thank you, mate. I hope I haven't come across too kind of sour grapes or anything, because I would not want to ruin Ted's victory by being like that. I just wanted to talk about some of the stuff, you know what I mean? Because there is no sour grapes. I congratulated Ted and says, well done, champ. And I hope he enjoys his win and goes on to somewhere from that. But, you know, I just wanted to chat with you with the stuff that we chatted about and bring it up. But thanks, Boxing Social, as usual.